As a basic assumption here, I'm assuming that your research proposal, the research that you're doing, or the research that you've done has been pretty well framed out and conducted. And you can always refer to my online workshop on conducting educational research if you've not already done that. However, let's assume that that's been done. Now, before you write up your paper, you will know that conducting any research is a kind of messy business. Whilst it might end up looking pristine and tidy, the process is often frustrating and messy. And that's because you're collecting lots of bits of information from various sources that you're reading from the research process itself. And that's why writing effective notes is pretty important. And in this short lecturette, I think that's the word for it, we're going to go through the key things. And believe me, follow this, because it's been a bit of a nemesis to me, because in the past I've not done this as thoroughly as I could. So it's an essential thing to do. So let's have a look at some different types of notes first that we can take in preparation for writing up paper. Firstly, the personal notes. And these are your own ideas, your own framing questions about the research area and perhaps what you're doing as a result of looking at the literature and doing the research. And often this is where you can be quite creative. This is your own individualized framing of what's going on. And it's really important to do these and write them down when you think of them, because if you don't, you'll probably forget them at some later stage. But make sure you know they're personal notes and not necessarily something that you've lifted from the literature. Now, very often you will actually quote a source directly and absolutely, and that's a quotation note. So if you're going to quote someone, then you must capture it exactly, and obviously you must capture the referencing, etc., the date, the author, and the page number. Really important to do that. Now, paraphrase notes are when you're not taking the quote exactly, but you're taking the essential idea and you're kind of putting it in your terms, but keeping it very much still linked to the authority figure. That's going to be covered in the next slide in a bit more detail. And finally, summary notes. Now, this is where you take an overview of somebody's perspective. Now, for example, if I talk about the idea of evidence-based teaching, I might say the work of Jeff Petty on evidence-based teaching suggests that, whatever. It's where you are taking the main idea. For example, if you talk about things like multiple intelligence, you've got people like Howard Gardner, learning styles, people like Annie and Munsford, etc. So it's where you provide a short overview of the person's work, and you would just refer to their name. Okay, so that's the main types of notes. Obviously, all of these are likely to be useful. Right, let's have a look at writing paraphrase notes. Now, it's where you're putting things in your own words, but you've still got to keep authentic to the source. So here's 5 key rules when you paraphrase. Rewrite the original in about the same number of words. If you're making it too long or too short, you're probably not paraphrasing it. It might be a summary or whatever. Okay, make sure you've got in-text citation to the source, author, date, page number. That's true for quotation notes as well. Retain exceptional words, phrases, by enclosing them in quotational marks. So again, if the person has a key word, for example, John Atty uses the term Russian dolls to relate to instructional strategies that combine eye, effect, size methods. So if you take that statement of his Russian dolls, put it in quotation marks. Now this is important. Whilst you are paraphrasing, keep to the tone of the writer. For example, just using myself, Sale argues, frames, summarises. It wouldn't be appropriate for you to say that Sale waxes lyrical on, or Sale is adamant on. And finally, once you've done this, put the original aside when paraphrasing to avoid copying. There's always the danger of doing that. And then compare your finished paraphrase with the original source. Make sure that those rules have been met. So check that it meets 1 to 4 above. So that's paraphrase notes. Important thing to do well. Okay, let's have a final checklist here. Keep your notes in a clearly labelled folder, file system, and ensure backups. No need to have a safe vault, I think, but make sure that they're not likely to be opened by somebody else. So if you've got a dog or a cat, it's going to chew them up. Keep them safe. Keep them organised, really important under heading sections, because otherwise you'll create cognitive overload and cognitive strain for yourself, and you're going to spend a lot of time hunting around for them. And believe me, I still do this, and I'm still working on it. Okay, for notes from authorities, quotation, paraphrase, summary, etc., keep the full referencing system. If you miss one of these things out, it usually means that you're on the internet trying to chase it up at some later date. So it's best to do it at source. And have multiple backups. I'm paranoid. I'll usually have at least 3 different sources. Okay, that's the summary lecturette on note taking.